first episode in our new setup.
First episode in November, post Halloween season.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why I said it so exuberantly.
Well, we are getting in now to the rest of the holiday season, Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Gross.
Oh no.
I'm not ready. There's a lot of effort behind those holidays.
Which one do you like better? You a Thanksgiving or are you a Christmas person?
I don't know. I feel like it's changed in my 20s, especially since we live so far from home. Christmas?
Yeah, I think I still like Christmas too.
I feel like they could cancel Thanksgiving and it wouldn't change my life that much.
There's just too much traffic at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And because we have to travel, it makes it really difficult.
Yeah, we spend so much time in the car, and it's like such a condensed, that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is such a condensed time where we're driving back and forth to different family members, and there's 3 meals, and by the time like we're done, I'm like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Like, it's very food centered.
Yeah.
So you eat a lot, and then you get in the car, and then you drive an hour and a half to the next house. And
have you got your Christmas list ready yet, though?
no.
Because
I never have my Christmas list on time.
I know, but it's like you almost do have to have it ready by November because
everyone
otherwise...
asks at Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is just like the dry run for Christmas, where everybody talks about their Christmas plans and what they want for Christmas.
I feel like there are some people who like Thanksgiving because somehow Thanksgiving can sometimes seem a little simpler, but it's just the traffic. Because all the gift buying can get a bit hectic. So I see why people might like Thanksgiving better if they were close to the people they were having Thanksgiving dinner with. It does seem like a simpler holiday.
It's so chaotic just to get everyone on the same page about plans. Especially in my family, there's always someone working on either Thanksgiving or Christmas. And then you have to have Christmas in January or something, and then there's some member of the family who can't come, so then you have Christmas again, and then with us being so far away, then we have to go back and forth a couple of times.
Yeah.
And
so I guess we'll see when I edit this how this new mic placement sounds. The mic is now up instead of down.
It's encouraging me to sit up straighter.
I should be sitting up straighter too, probably. But yeah, I think we could... Let's keep the intro a little shorter this time.
Okay.
Because I'd like to, going forward, maybe try to condense these episodes a little bit so they're not hour-and-a-half marathons.
Sorry.
When people are listening back.
Sorry.
The goal is to have this one be under an hour.
Oh boy.
In the final edited version.
Oh boy. Okay.
Now, obviously, when we're recording it, it might go a little over an hour because it'll go over an hour because we'll be taking breaks. But yeah, once I have it edited, my goal is to 59 minutes.
Oh boy. Okay. I'm gonna have to talk fast through my part. I think. Yeah.
That's all right. We'll see what happens. It's a goal to aim for. So even if we knock it down to just over an hour, then at least we're moving more in the right direction. But yeah, this one's going to be a little different because we didn't plan this one out too far in advance, so both of us just picked a topic.
Yeah, we don't really have a theme today.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a theme, you have a theme, but we don't have a combined theme for the episode. I am going back to a topic that I talked about in episode 4, Ley Lines, because I mentioned it then and skimmed over very briefly, but it's a fascinating subject, so I wanted to go a little more in depth today on that.
I'm excited. I don't actually know anything about ley lines. They get brought up all the time in ghost stories where at the end they're just like, and by the way, it was across a ley line, and everyone gasps, but no one really explains what a ley line actually is.
I think, well, I'll get into it more, but they've become something different in the popular imagination than to what that they were originally academically proposed to be. And what do you have?
Today I'm going to talk about the Poltergeist franchise and some of the bizarre and very tragic events that have happened around that franchise.
All right. So we're going to change it up this time, correct? I was going to go first this time.
You go first.
To switch things up. We're still kind of working out how that we want things to go, but...
Let us know what you like. How do you feel about it?
But yeah, as I was talking about in season 4, people proposed ley lines as
in
an explanation.
Season 4?
Season 4. In episode 4.
We did 4 seasons. Where was I?
Oh my, yes, no. We're still in season 1 of this.
Okay.
I don't think podcasts have seasons.
I don't. Some of them do.
They do?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like more like hard-hitting journalist pieces where they...
I think currently these are labeled as being seasons in the edits at least. Are they labeled as such online?
Not on... No.
Okay.
Anyways, Ley Lines.
Yes. So, as I mentioned in episode 4, people use them as an explanation to describe why some areas might supposedly be more haunted than others. As we looked at the maps, there doesn't really seem to be an excess cluster of them on any of the maps that I saw in New England compared to anywhere else in the world. I just wanted to look a little more in depth as to where the idea came from, kind of when it developed, and what supposedly they are, and who invented the idea, and who's the proponents of the idea today. So they are supposedly these intentional straight lines that crisscross the globe, connecting various archaeological sites. They've gained popularity since the 1960s in the Earth Mysteries movement and the New Age movement.
I'm sorry, what is the Earth Mysteries movement?
So the Earth Mysteries movement is an umbrella term, but it proposes that certain sites on the Earth have certain energies. Sometimes they're listed as being electromagnetic, but
okay.
When you see people measuring electromagnetic anomalies in certain areas, that's part of the idea on it. But then also ley lines are part of it too, that supposedly there are just certain places on the Earth that are inherently more supernatural than other places.
Okay.
Today in the scientific community, ley lines are considered pseudoscience, of course, and we'll get into why later. But the idea originated in the 1920s by an Englishman named Alfred Watkins.
It's a very English name.
It is. It's a very 19th... He sounds like he would have been friends with, like, Tolkien or something. And he proposed that certain sites from Neolithic England could be connected by straight lines, and that these straight lines were used by the original inhabitants to mark out sacred paths, and that these paths had a certain spiritual energy attached to them. Now, it's easy to see where he got this idea from, because later on, after the Neolithic period, the Romans showed up in England, and they built their roads in very straight lines that you can still find across the country today. And also, his maps that he produced were fairly convincing. He oftentimes thought that these ley lines went across long ridges or a series of hills, so they would have formed an early primitive highway between different sites. Also, many early sites were located on hilltops, which makes sense to build a settlement on a hilltop at the time. One, it's easy for defense, and two, if it's some kind of sacred site, a lot of the sacred sites did have to do with seasons, measuring the movement of the sun and moon and stars, because these were agricultural societies, so they had to know when to plant and when to harvest. So one of the earliest people to propose that ancient sacred sites had been connected by straight lines was the Reverend Edward Duke in 1846. And this idea also formulated at the turn of the 20th century in Germany as well, and it was a similar thing going on there, where they were trying to figure out old paths between old sites. But in the English-speaking world, Alfred Watkins is considered to be the person who first pushed this idea into the public mainstream. So Alfred Watkins was not a scientist. He was actually a businessman from Hereford, which is on the English-Welsh border. He began looking at Ordnance Survey maps, and Ordnance Survey is an organization in England that produces maps most of the time nowadays. They produce road maps, and I guess nowadays with Google Maps, they're not quite as prominent as they were, but at the time they were the national map-making organization. Alfred Watkins' 1925 book, The Old Straight Track, proposed a network of straight roads that went all the way across ancient Britain. Alfred Watkins' ideas were very quickly, though, rejected by the archaeological and historical community there.
They're like, stick to business, Alfred. You're not an archaeologist.
They very quickly pointed out that due to the density of ancient sites in Europe, you can quite easily just draw any random straight line and find it will link up a number of sites. They found it was kind of the same as looking up the night sky at the stars and saying you can just draw a straight line connecting all these stars, but with any random placement of anything, you can do that. And several of them actually drew up fake maps just to prove that he was wrong, claimed they were created by Alfred Watkins, and then when they gained traction, these people came out and said, "No, I just made this up.
Oh, how embarrassing.
This was complete nonsense. I just drew a random straight line here."
Poor Alfred.
His idea fell out of fashion until the post-war period in the 1960s. You had people claiming it was the age of Aquarius and everyone's going to become spiritually enlightened, and it was Woodstock, and
Did
you
they?
know the time. Yes, this is the height.
Did they reach spiritual enlightenment?
We are currently living in just the most spiritual
Great.
age that the earth has ever. This is it, guys. We did it. We did it.
This sucks. This sucks so bad.
His ideas gained traction in the hippie community, and one proponent of Watkins' ideas was a man named John Mitchell, who was probably the biggest proponent of them, and he expanded the idea from just being Britain or Europe to being a worldwide network. Eventually, the UFO theorists got in on the idea, and they thought that these lines could be drawn, and they were how that ancient UFOs landed at Stonehenge and the pyramids.
Excellent.
And how
So
they
it's like
mapped their way across the globe.
So it's like a big UFO highway.
Yeah,
Excellent.
essentially that's kind of the idea morphed into, extraterrestrial highway across the earth.
Great. So it's like one of those things that you see, like a meme on Facebook, where it's like, how to see the country in 17 days. But with the UFOs in the world. Okay.
Yeah, for
Great.
UFOs, back when there was, a lot less to see on the earth at the time, because most humans were at that time.
Yeah, so, it takes a lot to cover. You have to cover a lot of ground if you want to see everything at that time. I get it. That's very innovative. Yeah. Congratulations, aliens.
You can see where they were coming from with this idea, because as you go across the world, almost every ancient human culture built astronomically aligned large-scale monuments. Mm-hmm. And this falls into the very legitimate field of astroarchaeology, which I'll get into later. But one of the most important books that John Mitchell published on the subject was The View Over Atlantis in 1969, which also combined not only Ley Lines, but also Atlantis and also flying saucers.
So we're hitting all the highlights then.
Yeah,
right.
This is around the time period when you start getting these, like you see the building blocks for these later grand conspiracy theories that would emerge at the end of the 20th century. Following more in the path of Mitchell than Watkins, you had these lay hunter communities that popped up, and they would go around and they would try to produce large scale global maps because now these lines supposedly crisscross the Earth in perfect fashion. And that's where those pictures I showed you the other week come into play.
Okay. The ones that were just utter chaos and all different.
Yeah,
okay.
They're all different. Interestingly enough, even though the ley line hunting kind of fell out of favor near the end of the 20th century, certain groups still use it today.
Is that group the Travel Channel?
Yes, it is the Travel Channel. But also, there's a group in Seattle that decided they were going to plot all the ley lines across Seattle. It was a few years back. So that became the first American city to be fully ley-lined mapped. I can neither confirm nor deny that these match up with the various other ley lines.
How do you just... I'm so confused about how you just draw the map. Like, how do you decide where the line goes?
Well, as the people who were disproving Watkins in the early part of the 20th century showed, you can usually just draw random lines.
Okay, so I can just put a line anywhere and just call it a ley line.
And eventually,
excellent.
Yeah, it's going to go far enough across the Earth, it will intersect something.
Okay,
simply by probability. And then even if it doesn't, you can just claim you found the anti-ley line. Think about it.
The new antimatter.
Yeah, you found the path where that nothing spiritual happens.
The anti-spiritualist map. On it. That's my new passion.
So the movement began to lose steam. It seems mostly in the 80s, and it's because different people within the ley hunter community just didn't agree with each other about who built these, why they built them, and of course where they were. Eventually these people moved on to other paranormal research.
For the Travel Channel?
For the Travel Channel,
okay.
Yeah.
I need to stop harassing the Travel Channel now.
So even though ley lines never gained traction in the scientific community, the field of archaeoastronomy, and I misstated it earlier. I said it was astroarchaeology. It's archaeoastronomy.
I love it. This is my new favorite word.
Yeah, and archaeoastronomy is the actual study of ancient sites and how that they line up with the stars and the Earth at
That's
large.
Fun.
So they take the same data that the ley line community uses, but they ask questions about why were they aligned this way? What can we infer about the cultures who built them based on these lines and based on where that these sites were located? And the truth is, astronomically aligned sites are built all over the world. One that I forgot to mention earlier that was used as evidence for ley lines was the Nazca lines in South America, which were built by a group that predated the Inca, and they drew these long lines across the desert in South America. And there's been various ideas about why these lines were built. There's been the proposal that they were meant to mirror certain astronomical phenomena that they saw, that they were supposed to be seen by sky beings, heavenly beings. There's the idea that they were runways for UFOs. But unfortunately, because that culture didn't leave a writing system intact, all we can do is theorize.
Assume UFOs. That's
UFOs.
Literally all we have left now.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything is always just like aliens. Sorry.
But yeah.
Continue, please.
Yeah, many sites in the ancient world were aligned astronomically because at the time, being able to know the seasons, know the times was essential for survival. So one part of archaeoastronomy that's very interesting is they have to look at where the stars are located now, but then they have to also factor in how that these stars would have looked and where they would have been positioned in the sky thousands of years ago. Because as Earth's spinning around the sun is also flying around the center of the Milky Way galaxy at an incredibly fast speed. And as a result, over thousands of years, the positions of these constellations change in the sky as well as the shapes of them, not to mention precession of the zodiac signs, which were very important to ancient peoples because they used those signs to mark the seasons with the equinoxes and the solstices.
Now we use them to see who we shouldn't date.
Yeah. Like I said, we live in the most enlightened spiritual time. So, for example, when many of these sites were built, there would have been a different constellation rising with the spring equinox. Frequently, that was one of the most important dates. Also, in ancient times, the star Polaris that we think of as the North Star wasn't actually the North Star, because as the Earth spins on its axis, slowly that direction of north changes, and there would have been a different North Star at the time.
That all makes logical sense, but that's still really trippy.
So think about, and another thing that's trippy, think about how that the modern zodiac says that the constellation Aries is the first in their listing.
As in Aries, yes, we are first.
Yeah, and
We're the most important.
And when most of this documentation about the zodiac signs was first written down thousands of years ago, that was true. Aries was rising with the sun in the spring equinox, but for a very long time now, it's been Pisces. And
I'm not going to acknowledge that.
That just goes to show like how old these ideas are. And you get these New Age movement people who claim that we're in the age of Aquarius now. We're not in the supposedly we used to be in the age of Pisces, now we're in the age of Aquarius, and we live in the spiritually enlightened time. I let that statement be judged on its own.
I'm going to go ahead and say that's a very Virgo statement of you.
So these people were saying that now it's the age when, Aquarius rises in the spring equinox, but it doesn't. It won't for some time. It still is going to rise in Pisces.
For how much time?
For a fair bit of time. When the International Astronomical Union, I believe that's their name, plotted out the exact location of what space on the star map that these constellations take up. This was a scientific body that plotted out the night sky so that when they could discover distant objects, they'd be able to name them and locate them more easily. They'd be like, because many times these constellations do overlap some, so it'd be easier to say, oh, this is in Virgo, this is in Draco. So using their measurements, we won't enter the age of Aquarius until about the year 2600.
Goals. Okay.
So
I don't know why I said goals. That didn't make any sense. See you then.
I would also like to do a future episode on the differences between ancient astrology versus modern astrology, because ancient astrology got used to predict more large-scale events, so it interests me a little more than modern astrology, which just seems to exist to tell people who they shouldn't date, which might say something about the narcissism of our age, when that people think that their minuscule lives hold cosmic importance. But
wow. Whoa. See, my experience with astrology right now is just people looking at me and going like, oh, you're an Aries? Well, we can't be friends. And then other people are like, Aries? Yes, best friends. But my favorite is when people tell me that we shouldn't be married because we're an Aries and a Virgo. Because we're just defying all the cosmic rules. You write so much. I feel like you don't cover nearly the amount of information that you write in your research. You've got like a whole dissertation here.
No, actually, a lot of this is I tried something different. Instead of typing out the whole thing, I've copied and pasted large chunks from other sources. I was trying something different, and I was like, I can just kind of scan it as I go, but I don't think that I don't think I like what I did this time, because it means I kind of just have to keep scanning. So some of the most famous sites that are astronomically aligned in the world, they're the Mayan sites. There's Stonehenge. Most stone circles are aligned with various dates in the year, and so they would have served as early calendars at the time. Many of the mounds that I was talking about in episode 1 were all astronomically aligned, and very often it tends to be either spring equinox or solstice, one of the two. In the far northern hemisphere, many burial sites would be aligned for the winter solstice. So many ancient barrows where they'd have a dugout in a hillside and a large chamber in the middle where that people were buried. This tunnel would only be lit during the shortest day of the year, because also that tied into their ideas of death and rebirth too. And this is another case of looking back at the archaeology and using it to deduce how things were important, because of course those people didn't write it down. In Egypt, many of the sites associated with Amun-Ra, who was their sun god, were aligned with the sun on different dates. The precinct of Amun-Ra, which is one of the largest sites dedicated to that god, was also aligned for the midwinter solstice, which is interesting because, of course, Egypt it's in the northern hemisphere, but it's not as far north as the sites that I was mentioning for burials, where that they had it aligned with the winter solstice. So that's interesting, but also because of Egyptian beliefs on death and rebirth, again, you can see the tie-in of importance that the winter solstice had, because as the sun gets to the lowest part of the year, then then it dies and is born again. Interesting side tangent. So the Egyptians, by using measurements of the sun, they were the first people that we know of who wrote down the circumference of the Earth.
Fun.
So thousands of years before Aristotle and his nonsense, they were able to look at shadows that were cast during the shortest and longest days of the year across Egypt, because of course Egypt is aligned north-south with the Nile, so they were able to look at sites in Upper Egypt where the sun would be directly overhead versus sites in Lower Egypt where there'd be a shadow being cast. They could then measure the differences between these shadows cast, and then they knew the distance between these sites, and then they used that to accurately estimate the circumference of the Earth. So Newgrange is one of the most famous Neolithic burial sites that's aligned astronomically. That one's in Ireland, and that one is aligned with the winter solstice. So jumping back to Egypt, there's the Giza necropolis. Of course, the Sphinx is aligned east-west, but not everyone knows this. The Great Pyramid of Giza actually doesn't have 4 sides. That pyramid actually has 8 sides.
What?
Yeah, so only on, and I'm 90% sure it's the fall equinox, you will actually see the 8 sides. In the middle of each face of the pyramid, there's a slightly concave shape, so it bends inwards just a little bit.
Huh.
That is an incredible feat of engineering from thousands of years ago. Like, in fact, I'm not sure that there are many or any modern buildings that align quite that way. I guess some people would say that Manhattan aligns on certain days of the year because it's built with the grid system.
There's a lot of ley lines in Manhattan.
So I mentioned Mesoamerican sites earlier. There's El Castillo in Chichen Itza, but also many Aztec sites and Olmec sites were also aligned. Of course, there's Stonehenge and various other smaller stone circles from around the world. And also in Southeast Asia, the temple complex around Angkor Wat is built to align east-west with the rising of the sun on the solstice and equinoxes. When you look at this site from Google Earth, it is enormous. It is an entire city. There's a large lake to the west of the temple that is the size of a modern-day airport runway. And it's incredible that this was built without laser lines, without modern-day construction equipment. This was just done using the stars and the sun and the sky to make perfectly straight lines. So I could keep going for a long time. There are countless sites across the world that are astronomically aligned. However, I said I was going to keep this a little shorter this time. And each one of these sites, maybe in the future, would be worth going a little more in depth into. But kind of in conclusion, between the archaeoastronomy field and the ley line field, we can see the connection that I keep coming back to over and over again between cultural ideas and stories and the real events, real historical things that have been changed and morphed over time and had our modern day mindset applied to them. Because I think a lot of people want to believe that UFOs showed up and taught ancient people how to build large sites. And it's a curious thing to want because, to me at least, it seems it gives our human ancestors a better story to be able to say that they invented this through hard work, through extreme feats of mental prowess, which we have no record of any other animal on the earth possessing, building these sites that align with the rest of the natural world on such a scale. But I think the UFO community wants there to be a entity that came down and gave humans this knowledge, because I think that might leave open a promise that these entities could still maybe come back one day and teach us how to get out of the mess that we've made the modern world. It would be nice if there was an easy way out of the mess that we're in today with war and environmental destruction and a very uncertain future. And people will disagree with me here. And people will disagree with me here, but I think it can give us hope to know that our ancient ancestors were able to overcome enormous adversity and give us the world that we have today, because it means that if they were able to do it, that we can also do it too. So I'd like to end on a more hopeful note this time.
That's really lovely. I think it's because they don't know how they built those structures, and they can't admit it. They can't admit that they don't know something that's within the realm of human possibility. Yeah. So they just assign it to aliens because narcissism. Cultural narcissism.
It feels a bit defeating to say that in our modern world we couldn't build such grand monuments, but at the same time we only build things if we think they're economical. Mm-hmm. So there's a different motivation. These large monuments aren't going to be built in a capitalist economy because they're not capable of producing excess capital. If we wanted to, sure, we could build more pyramids today, and we could build incredibly straight Nazca lines. In fact, our modern-day highways and high-speed rail lines go straight distances over very long distances.
Straight distances over long distances, yes. The distance is very straight. I don't know how to transition out of that one.
Yeah.
My story has nothing to do with your story.
Mine wasn't even really a story. Mine was just like, here's some facts. Here's a guy called Watkins, and
Mine's kind of like that, but it's a series of stories. I'm combining two of my favorite things, which is film and creepy, unexplained phenomenon. Allegedly, the Poltergeist film franchise is cursed. And this is based upon a series of unusual events and tragic, unexplained deaths. Why are you looking at me like that?
you paused, you said a series of, and I was about to jump in and say unfortunate.
They were indeed unfortunate.
I'm sure they were. That's what I was about to jump in and say. Sorry.
You're dressed like a professor today.
I was talking about Mr. Watkins. I thought I should dress how I imagined he dressed. Not even a professor. He was a businessman from Hereford.
Businessman should stick to business.
I've been to Hereford. It's actually nice there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very nice town.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
You want to just
What was
start
I
in
talking
again?
about?
Just start in again. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My fault.
Oh, I haven't really started. I'm still...
Just start in with Just start in from the top. Sorry, that's my fault.
I don't know. I'd already wrapped it up so well. I don't know what I said.
You said I don't know how to transition, but here's my stuff.
I'm not going to conclusively say whether or not the franchise is cursed. I don't know if it's cursed. I don't know if curses exist. Either way, there is an unusually high number of odd phenomenon surrounding the franchise that happened in a short period of time.
Okay.
And some might argue that still happens to this day. The franchise launched in 1982 with the release of Poltergeist, which follows the Freeling family as they try to reclaim their home from supernatural forces. They realize by the end of the movie that their home was built on, in quotes, an ancient Indian burial ground. The story was based on an actual haunting in Denver, Colorado. The film was directed by Tobe Hooper. He also directed Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Poltergeist was written and produced by Steven Spielberg. The film grossed $132 million, and it was nominated for 3 Oscars: Best Visual Effects, Best Sound Effects, and Best Music. And in all 3 categories, it lost to E.T., which was Steven Spielberg's film that released the week before.
You know that meme where it's Obama giving a medal to Obama? It's like Steven Spielberg beats Steven Spielberg to win.
1982, the summer of 1982 was sometimes called the Summer of Spielberg because E.T. and Poltergeist came out together in that same, this may or may not have anything to do with the curse. I just found it fascinating. So a bit of film history here. There may have been a lot of tension on set because of E.T. which just may have contributed to the kind of the filming environment that they were in. So contractually, Spielberg was not allowed to direct 2 movies at once, but he had E.T. and Poltergeist in production simultaneously. So a lot of people think that Hooper was brought in kind of just to put another body in there and say, this is the director. See, I'm not breaking the rules. But Spielberg was on set every day. And half of the actors will tell you that Hooper directed them, and half of the actors will tell you that Spielberg directed them. Spielberg also did all of the storyboards.
So, like, the film equivalent of having, like, a ghost writer, because writers can only, a lot of times they can only publish 1 book per year, so...
Which there's still, like, contention between them to this day, because Spielberg kind of indicated, he said something about Hooper just, like, not being a very take charge kind of guy on set and stuff. So he was, like, doing him a favor and stepping in to direct actors in his place, which Hooper, you know, didn't love that because, you know, here's this huge successful movie that he has a director credit on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Spielberg wrote an open letter apology that he published, like, publicly. He didn't even, like, go to him privately. He wanted the whole, like, it was a big show. So that's happening on set, which if your producer who's hired you is showing up and directing actors in your place, like, that's your boss. He's like micromanaging you. You're not going to be like, hey, Steven Spielberg, can you I direct my actors now? Thank you.
Yeah.
So this sounds really awkward. This sounds like incredibly awkward, tense situation. Not to mention, in things that I've directed, I want to do the storyboards. Like, that's a huge part of how you're telling the story. Hooper didn't even get to do his own storyboards.
When you hear about drama between certain celebrities, sometimes you wonder how much of it is real and how much of it is manufactured.
Yeah.
Because at the same time, Hooper also gets a director credit. It sounds like, in some ways, Spielberg is micromanaging him, but also, had the film gone south, had it gotten bad reviews or something, he then would have had an out to where he could have said,
yeah,
well, it's not my fault. Spielberg got in the way all the time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's still kind of it's still a win for Hooper. Like, it's definitely not a loss.
Yeah. However, in the beginning of Poltergeist, it does come across the screen and say a Steven Spielberg film. So, and a lot of people will, when they talk about it, will be like, directed by Steven Spielberg. I didn't realize that there was another person involved in this until I got into the research, because everyone attributes it to Spielberg.
No, this is news to me. I think anytime I talked about it in the past, I was always, Poltergeist, Spielberg,
Yeah. So this is what we're starting off with, is this kind of on-set tension, which is, it's already, you know, any film set is tense to begin with. It's a high-stress environment. Plus, it's a horror movie, which means your actors have to maintain this high-stress persona for weeks. So that's kind of the situation we're starting off with. Oh, I am going to tell all of this chronologically.
Okay.
I'm not going to mix up by order of most disastrous to least. I'm going to tell you from 1982 to now what's happening.
Okay.
That might be a bad choice. We'll find out. On the set of Poltergeist 1, some of the cast and crew reported a heaviness on set throughout filming and unusual events and malfunctions. In the scene where Robbie is attacked by the clown doll, the mechanical doll malfunctioned and the arms closed around his neck, causing him to choke. He begins to scream for help, but Spielberg and Hooper thought he was acting and kept going with the scene. And they realized something was wrong when he began to turn blue. And that's when they immediately jump up to try and free him from a horrifying clown doll.
This is why I disagree with people who diss on CGI. CGI is wonderful.
Mm-hmm. You know what? If you have a problem with how some CGI looks, you go do it.
Yeah.
Either you get choked by the clown doll or you learn CGI. One of the more famous scenes in Poltergeist is in the end of the movie when Diane Freeling falls into the swimming pool with the skeletons. Allegedly, actress JoBeth Williams was not told that the skeletons were real until after the scene. In a later interview, she said, "In my innocence and naivety, I assumed that these were not real skeletons. I assumed that they were prop skeletons made out of plastic or rubber. I found out, as did the crew, that they were using real skeletons because it's far too expensive to make fake skeletons out of rubber."
You know, when I first saw that movie as a kid, I thought they were fake skeletons. It wasn't until I watched it with you in my 20s that you told me those were real skeletons.
Most that you see from that time were real. That was not an uncommon practice. It gets brought up a lot in Poltergeist and the curse of Poltergeist and whatever in the mythology of this. But it wasn't uncommon. Like, in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the skeletons in that one, they're also real skeletons. At the time, it was cheaper. Is it ethical? Questionable, but it was cheaper.
I would love to find out, like, if people who donate their bodies to science to be researched after they die, do people donate their bodies to Hollywood?
There's some kind of cruel irony in that. I finally got a leading role.
Oh,
finally got a movie.
Oh no. Oh no.
Ugh.
Oof. Oof. That hurts. That hurts. Sorry, keep going. That hurts. That hurts. That's
that hurts
brutal.
me. That hurts me. I've had a lot of failed auditions recently. During the filming of this scene, JoBeth Williams at first did not want to get in the pool because of all the electrical equipment around it, and she was concerned for her safety because, you know, water and electricity are not a great combination. So apparently, to coax her into the pool, Steven Spielberg got in the water with her and said, "If you fry, I fry." It worked. She got in the pool, and they filmed the scene. This is the scene that kind of launched the curse. Everybody goes, there were real skeletons. This is where the curse comes from. At the time of filming Poltergeist, JoBeth Williams was staying in a rental apartment in LA for the shoot. And one night she came home to find every single picture on the wall crooked. She straightened them, but when she came home the next night, they were crooked again. She said that happened every night that she stayed there.
This was while filming was happening?
Yes, this is over the course of the 12 weeks that she was on set for Poltergeist.
There's also a part of me that wonders if there was some poor unnamed PA who got told to do that every day just to keep the talent on just like high alert and constantly freaked out.
That's a good theory. Someone would do that too.
Someone
in Hollywood would do that.
Someone would definitely do that.
Ew. You're right. That's not out of the realm of possibility.
There's some unnamed PA that during the day got sent to the hotel room to just mess with things. I don't know. Allegedly. Allegedly per me.
If this one is the result of a PA, I have to call somebody. Actress Zelda Rubinstein, who played Tangia, the medium called in to help the family, said that during filming, she had a vision of her dog coming to her to say goodbye. Hours later, her mother called her to say that her dog had died.
Oh no.
Yeah.
And is that the one who's like the small lady?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And she apparently had a very rigorous audition for the role. But there are other interviews where she alludes to having mediumship or psychic abilities. So this is not the only. That could be just a coincidence because it seems like she had kind of a relationship with the other side and was a kind of clairvoyant, perhaps, before and after this event too. So this may be still unsettling because then she had to play her role.
She is actually my favorite in that movie, because I love that it's this all-natural deity that gets conquered by this little small-statured person. Like, I just...
She's just not taking it. She's just like, nope.
That is my favorite part of the movie.
She reprises the role in Poltergeist, too, and she got nominated for, like, Worst Supporting Actress, which is just rude.
I don't know, because...
I've never seen the second movie.
I've never seen it either.
I can't actually say I've seen the first movie, because when we watched it last year, I fell asleep.
We just watched it again the other week.
No, we didn't.
It was playing on the TV.
We watched the very end. After production wrapped, James Caan wrote the novelization of Poltergeist based on the screenplay. In a Reddit AMA, he said, "I can't vouch for the filming, and I really don't believe in spooks, but late one night, while I was writing the line, lightning streaked the sky. A huge bolt of lightning and simultaneous thunder hit the building. All of the lights went out, and when they came on a minute later, all of the video games in the office I was in started playing themselves. Nobody was in the building except me and the secretary who was transcribing what I was writing. She screamed, and we both left for the night."
Ugh.
Not great.
That makes me think of when I was editing last night. I'm trying to remember where I was at, but as I was editing the sleep paralysis episode last night, and there was that random huge clap of thunder in what was otherwise just a rainy evening that scared the cat.
Oh, that was like while I was recording a Halloween TikTok, like a video about Robert the Doll too, so I didn't like that.
Yeah, and it was the only clap of thunder all night.
Yeah.
The rest of the time
It
it was
wasn't
just
really a storm.
rain. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, it was happening as I was doing the final edits on the sleep paralysis.
The next event is definitely, I can't really rank the tragedies on this one. The next one's very upsetting.
Uh-huh.
And this is the story of Dominique Dunne, who played Dana in Poltergeist. Dominique Dunne was a rising star in the early 80s. She got her first role in 1979 in a made-for-TV movie called Diary of a Teenaged Hitchhiker. In 1981, she got her big break when she was cast in Poltergeist as Dana Freeling, the oldest of the Freeling children. In 1982, she appeared in another TV movie, The Shadow Riders. That same year, she was cast as Robin Maxwell in the science fiction miniseries V. On October 30th, 1982, Dunne was studying the script for V with castmate David Packer. While they were rehearsing, Dunne's abusive ex-boyfriend John Sweeney showed up on her front porch. Dunne had escaped and ended their tumultuous relationship after he had attacked her in their home the month prior. They had an on-again, off-again relationship starting in 1981, during which Sweeney is described as possessive and jealous. The night that he showed up at her home, Dunne agreed to speak with him on the porch. That's when Sweeney attacked Dunne and strangled her until she was unconscious. Dunne was taken to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in LA, but she never regained consciousness. She was 22 years old. Sorry, this story, like, makes me so mad.
It's horrible.
It somehow gets worse. John Sweeney was acquitted of second-degree murder, but found guilty of voluntary manslaughter, a lesser charge, and sentenced to the maximum for that charge, which is 6 years in prison.
How is going to someone's house to strangle them manslaughter?
Exactly.
Like, the act of going to that person's house makes it premeditated because no one asked you to be there.
Also, they estimated that he strangled her for 3 minutes. 3 whole minutes.
Like...
Do you know how long 3 minutes is?
I mean, yeah, I've been looking at the clock on the recording here. That's...
He only served 3 years, 7 months, and 6 days.
How...
Yeah. He ultimately left California and changed his name to John Mara. So he's still out there. Just living under a totally different name, just living his life. He, got a job as a chef, after he violently strangled someone to death.
Ugh.
It's infuriating. The whole case is intense. I'm not going to go into full details of the trial. It was obviously severely mishandled. There was a point when one of Sweeney / Mara's exes was brought in to testify about their relationship and, the number of times that he had put her in the hospital because of his abuse. But it was ruled that the jury didn't get to see that part of the testimony, which they think is a big part of why he was not convicted for second-degree murder.
But also, pro tip for anyone listening, what's really easy?
Not strangling someone.
Yep. That requires zero effort.
No means no. She ended the relationship.
Like,
take your rejection and leave.
Like, it requires zero effort to not strangle someone. It is easier to not commit murder than murder someone. It actually takes work to kill someone. So, it's easy? Just don't kill him.
He's just a narcissist. He's just a ridiculous, manipulative, abusive narcissist. Because he, got on the stand and told some sob story about her, saying that she was going to marry him or whatever, and then changed her mind. It's infuriating.
And so what? People change their minds all the time. People who think that they're entitled to other humans are, just the biggest losers on the planet. And yet somehow they get off easy because we're supposed to feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
Because they're poor little insecure people.
Yeah, his little sob story, I guess, worked on the jury, and there's a lot of controversy around the judge that handled that case, too. There's a lot of information about this case. If you want more, Morbid Podcast did a great episode on Dominique Dunn, and Dominique's father, Dominic Dunn, wrote an excellent piece for Vanity Fair about the events and the aftermath for the family. Dominique Dunn is remembered as a lover and collector of stray animals. They said she loved being an actress and was passionate about her career. I mean, she would have gone on to have a really great one. Makes me so mad.
Yeah, this dude wasn't a rising star. He was a loser.
No, he just...
what a loser.
Just to take that kind of person off the planet because you don't get to possess them. What a trash human being.
Yeah.
This is the part where I regret doing this part in order, because now I am all fired up about that case. The murder took place 4 months after the release of Poltergeist 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it had just come out. She was... her career was coming together. She was getting out of a bad situation, had everything going for her. I was trying to transition into the next part of the story, and I got sidetracked again by...
So this person was only in jail for 3 years?
3 years, 7 months, and 6 days. After being sentenced to a maximum of 6 years for strangling someone to death.
I don't understand. How is that manslaughter? You show up at someone's house. That makes it not manslaughter.
Stuff like this happens all the time. So that was the first major tragedy that was associated with the Poltergeist franchise. I do want to clarify in this part, a curse did not make John Sweeney / Mara kill his ex-girlfriend.
No, it was a choice.
He regardless of any sort of supernatural, he chose. I don't like it when Paranormal Activity or whatever gets scapegoated into people causing violence against one another.
No, that's just as lame as him claiming that her rejecting him caused him to, how to, not hold account for your actions. How to not be accountable.
He murdered her of his own volition. A curse did not make him do it.
Yeah, no, he chose to do that.
I just want to be very, very clear about that. So because of the success of Poltergeist 1, they decided to do that Hollywood thing and make a sequel. In 1986, Poltergeist 2, The Other Side came out. The sequel takes place after the Freelings move in with Diane's mother. The beast manifests as Reverend Kane, a cult leader who torments the family in order to claim the youngest daughter, Carol Ann. The cast and crew noticed a dark and heavy presence on the set, and after they found out that the skeletons on set, again, were real, they started getting paranoid. So clearly at this time, there's already some kind of lore around the set. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was just because of that one PA who was making those pictures crooked. Allegedly. After one scene where the skeletons were used, the whole day's film stock came out completely black. They had to reshoot the entire day, and it cost the studio an additional $100,000. This film is expensive. That's why it went digital. Yeah. Rumors of the set being cursed ran through the cast and crew. After this, they wanted an exorcism performed. Will Sampson, who played Taylor, was a shaman in real life, so he performed an exorcism on set one night after everyone had left. Jo Beth Williams said that the nervous feeling that hung over the set dissipated afterwards. As far as I can tell, the rest of filming went on without incident. But shortly after they wrapped in 1985, Julianne Beck, who played Kane in Poltergeist 2, he had been battling stomach cancer throughout filming. Mm-hmm. And he did pass away shortly after picture wrap. For those who don't know, picture wrap is just you're done filming visuals. Mm-hmm. He was 60 years old. So because he was sick, this isn't a huge surprise, but it still comes up in the Poltergeist story. Okay. Beck was known for founding the Living Theater, and he was inducted to the American Theater Hall of Fame in 2004. He also published several books of poetry, and he had several smaller roles in film and television, but Poltergeist was his biggest role in film. The next one also comes after chronic illness, so it's not a huge surprise, but it also gets lumped in with the overarching Poltergeist story. In 1987, Will Sampson, who played Taylor, who had also performed the exorcism on set, died after complications with a chronic degenerative condition called scleroderma. He was 53 years old. Will Sampson was a Muskogee actor and had been acting for 10 years prior being cast in Poltergeist 2, so he actually didn't have a very long career. But the time that he worked in film was very influential. He's best known for playing Chief Bromden in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And in 1977, during filming on The White Buffalo, he stopped production and refused to work when he found out that white actors had been hired to play Native American characters. And in 1983, he founded the American Indian Registry for the Performing Arts, which advocates for film and television to hire Native American actors.
Oh, okay.
So he actually was, even though he worked for only a total of 12 years, he was actually very, very influential.
And what year was Poltergeist 2 filmed?
Poltergeist 2 was filmed in 1985 and released in 1986.
He died in 1987.
Mm-hmm. So
that's like a year after, though. Like, that's not...
Well, see, so this is really just events that happen. This isn't confined to events just during filming. Mm-hmm. This happens afterwards. This is more like if you were involved in this franchise in some way, then you could get claimed by the curse or whatever. Mm. The next one is also very sudden and tragic. In 1988, Heather O'Rourke reprised her role as Carol Ann Freeling in Poltergeist 3. Heather's first film was the first Poltergeist movie after Spielberg discovered her while eating in the MGM commissary. She beat out Drew Barrymore for the role.
Huh.
Because Spielberg wanted someone more angelic.
Oh, I thought he wanted someone who was good at eating.
I don't know. So, yes, after Heather O'Rourke was deemed more angelic than Drew Barrymore, she got the role. When she was 5 years old, Drew Barrymore got cast in E.T., so it's fine. Plenty of roles to go around. Between 1982 and 1988, Heather had earned 15 credits in film and television and was nominated for 6 Young Artist Awards. So she was kind of like one of the child actors of the time. Like, she was a big deal. In 1987, Heather was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which she was being treated for during the filming of Poltergeist 3. That turned out to be a misdiagnosis, and she actually had a blockage in her intestine and went into septic shock.
Oh, no.
And that happened during filming. She was rushed to the hospital, but they found out too late, and she died on February 1st, 1988, at the age of 12.
Oh, no.
Her doctor said that she didn't have any of the symptoms usually attributed to a bowel blockage, and that it's not common for a blockage to develop so suddenly and without warning. They ended up using a body double to finish filming. Heather had expressed that she hoped that if they made another Poltergeist movie, that it would be the last one because she wanted to play other characters. She's quoted saying, "I want to continue acting, but I also want to be a director. I've been thinking about it for a while. A couple of years ago, I decided it would be fun to experience work behind the camera. And I like to be able to work on scripts. I like acting a lot. It's fun. You meet a lot of people." So, even at 12, she was kind of, yeah. She and Dominique Dunn are buried in the same cemetery. Every couple of years in the 80s, there are headlines coming out that some actor associated with the Poltergeist franchise has died. Mm-hmm. Like, every couple of years. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that that's what's really solidified this idea of, like, oh, this movie must be cursed. Mm-hmm. Even if this is just a series of synchronicities or coincidences, mm-hmm. I think that's probably what solidified the idea in the public's mind. Mm-hmm. And this is where it starts becoming more lore than... Okay. Well, I think that's what made these parts of the story more lore. Everything else I'm going to talk about really happened, so... In 1992, Richard Lawson boarded Flight 405 to Cleveland. Lawson played Ryan, who was one of the investigators from the first Poltergeist movie. He had switched to Flight 405 last minute to try and beat a snowstorm. A flight attendant recognized him and bumped him up to first class, meaning he was now sitting in the front row. Mm-hmm. Many passengers, as well as Lawson, reported an uneasy feeling about the flight. After de-icing the plane, they took off but only made it 50 feet in the air and then veered sharply left. Mm. The plane bounced several times on the runway and then began to flip. Lawson said, "I heard the ground being chewed up. The whole world was turning over in slow motion. The next thing I knew, I was underwater." There were 24 survivors, but 27 people died on Flight 405. Richard Lawson was among the survivors, likely because he was sitting towards the front of the plane.
He was underwater? Did it go into a lake?
Yep. It got submerged. For the first full story, the Tampa Bay Times did an article and interviewed Lawson and other survivors about it, where they detail trying to swim out. I won't go into full detail for the sake of time here. There are no major events attributed to the so-called Poltergeist curse again until from 1992 to 2009. Okay. In 2009, Lou Perryman, who played one of the construction workers, again in the original Poltergeist movie, was at home alone in Austin, Texas, when a man broke in and murdered him with an axe. Seth Christopher Tatum, who had already done time for aggravated robbery, had been released before the attack, and he was sentenced to life for killing Lou Perryman. He said that he did it to steal his car.
Again, I think I'd like to point out here that it is very easy to not murder people.
Yeah, it's very easy not to go to someone's house with an axe.
Yeah, it is. You can just stay home.
Yeah. So
watch a movie.
This one was just random, senseless violence. I don't think they knew each other. Like, this was completely random. It just hard. Like, an axe murder in 2009 is, that happens in the 1920s. It just Lou Perryman also appeared in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and he was a crew member on the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He also appeared in Boys Don't Cry. Even though he was never a household name, it didn't ever achieve mainstream success in acting, he was described as a substantial and delightful asset to have on set or off camera. Excuse me, I read that wrong. Even though he never achieved mainstream success in film, he was described as a substantial and delightful asset to have on set, on or off camera. In 2015, it is just the age of the sequel and the reboot.
Mm-hmm.
So someone thought it would be super fun to reboot Poltergeist. This is where I kind of wonder if they're just capitalizing on all of this tragedy and the lore of a supposed curse. Allegedly. Director Gil Rennan claims to have experienced supernatural phenomenon while filming the reboot. He says that equipment would fail constantly and then start working again as soon as it was off of set. Their drone failed continuously and lights would blow out as soon as they were turned on. However, they also chose the plot of land that they filmed on because it was allegedly haunted. So, could be totally unrelated.
Also, sometimes equipment does just turn off.
It does. It just fails when it feels like it.
Yeah, and it loves to do it when you are short on time.
Mm-hmm. Every time.
I'd say that's more Murphy's Law than...
Yeah, I feel like every set is just like everything's constantly broken. Nothing ever works.
Yeah.
Keenan rented a house to stay in for the shoot, and there he said he was haunted by a woman in black who would haunt him in the house and then follow him to set. He also says that the owner later called him to discuss the haunting, which makes it sound like she wasn't haunting the house before Keenan stayed there.
He brought a ghost with him.
He brought a ghost with him from set, and then she was like, I like this house. I'm gonna chill here. All of these events are very tragic and upsetting, and it is likely just a coincidence.
This makes me think of the Ley Lines.
Yeah.
With enough events randomly spaced, you can draw a line that will connect several of them. And the murders of these characters, or these people, are very tragic. But that's something that happens all the time.
Yeah.
In the United States.
Yeah, and they didn't happen because of a curse. They happened because people
chose to choices people made.
Everyone uses all of this to tie together because the common denominator that happened is the Poltergeist franchise. Mm-hmm. So people, draw their lines to connect all these events when it could very well just be a coincidence. Mm-hmm. Special effects makeup artist Craig Reardon often gets unfairly blamed for the curse because it was his decision to use real skeletons, even though it was common practice on sets at the time.
Okay. So
by this logic, all of them should be cursed.
Yeah.
He does not like to talk about it. There was a 2002 documentary regarding the curse where he was interviewed. He said he had a very bad experience in the documentary, and he felt like his interview was used to apply credibility to the curse, even though he does not believe in it. And he takes extreme personal offense to being blamed for his choices that led to the deaths of cast members. Which, when we talk about stuff like this, it is very important to remember these are real people with real lives. And as much fun as it might be to claim that something creepy or paranormal or otherworldly is happening, it affects real people.
Yeah.
These were real tragedies that ultimately would have affected hundreds of people. All of Dominique Dunn's friends and family, Heather O'Rourke's family, all the cast members that knew them, the crew that worked with them. Lou Perryman had a daughter that he left behind. Like, it's important not to lose sight of the real people involved in this and the real effects that they had. That's why I know I'm sorry that I went on forever, but I did want to touch on their lives and their contributions and what they were like, rather than just talking about how they died.
That's fair.
And I'm sorry that did make this very long-winded, but they were people, and what they did and what they were like in their accomplishment should be discussed even more than their deaths.
I didn't say anything because I thought there was about to be another sentence right after that, so I didn't interject, and then that other sentence didn't come.
That's okay. Oof. Okay. That is all I have on the Poltergeist franchise. Though it's rumored in 2019, it was announced that there was going to be yet another documentary about it. I don't know what that's going to entail, but
This story makes me think of just other times when people get, because not all these people were in the public eye, and a lot of these people got shoved in the public eye so that faceless masses of people who are, cowards in their own home can make these people's lives worse just so they can have a little bit of entertainment. And I guess I'm specifically talking about this was he art director, you said?
Oh, the special effects makeup artist?
Sorry, the special effects makeup artist.
Because you get close to people on sets.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're in a high pressure situation, but you're also doing what you love, and I mean, you form bonds with people. Like, I can't imagine how much it would hurt to lose someone that I'd made a film with.
Yeah.
Not to mention 4 people,
mm-hmm.
5 people by 2009. And then for everyone to be like, oh, well, it's because they used real skeletons. And that's a decision that you made. Because that's the decision that everyone made at the time. Like, that's just what happened. And for him to get that kind of blame.
It just makes me think of how that conspiracy theorists will sometimes just pick just random people who are trying to just go about and live their daily lives, and then all of a sudden these people get harassed with death threats, and they'll have their lives ruined just so some keyboard warriors can have a bit of a laugh one day. It's incredibly cruel and monstrous, and it's like these people are humans, but the people who are attacking them, in a way, they're acting less than human.
Yeah.
In that moment, they're acting like savage animals.
Yeah.
Because because it's easy, just not ruining people's lives. You can just stay home, get a hobby. Don't murder someone with an axe. Don't strangle an ex on their porch. Just stay home. Put a puzzle together.
Have you considered doing a puzzle instead of murdering?
Because you know what? Lame, mediocre people are actually the unsung heroes of society, because they're the ones that just go to work and don't murder people. Like, how more people should be like them.
Some people do go to work and murder people.
Yeah, but they're not the norm. Normies I'm talking about. Okay.
I'm sorry this was a much heavier episode than I meant it to be when I started. Wow, I couldn't stop myself with the research because I kept going through long research tangents of every little piece of this, because I wanted to know everything about Will Sampson, then I wanted to know everything about Flight 405, and just went on and on and on. Could have gone longer, but I cut myself off.
Yeah, I'm inclined to believe the special effects makeup artist. I need a lot more proof to think that these events are because of a film and not because of and not because of people making choices to be cruel in life.
Either way, there are a unusually high number of strange events.
Yeah.
Which I think is why people are so fascinated with it. And it gets told and retold, but no one can actually prove if curses are real anyways, so... So, I mean, the simplest answer is probably the answer. They're just a series of very tragic or unusual events, but they get framed as, you know, spooky, paranormal, curse skeleton kind of.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk some about the real people around it.
And I understand it's very human to look for connections between events. This is a bit of a tangent, but I remember one time when I was in school, a kid came into class and had 2 puncture injuries on his arm, 2 scabs on his arm. They weren't long cuts, they were like little punctures. And the teacher immediately asked the kid, "What bit you?" And he said, "No, one of these scabs I've actually had for a week. I've been showing up to class with this scab. The other one I just got the other day." But the teacher automatically assumed that these 2 things happened at the same time and had the same cause. For some reason, that experience really stuck with me because that was one of the earliest times that I saw the effect of, you know, correlation doesn't prove causation.
I don't know where I thought that was gonna go, but it didn't go there.
No, that's it. That's all there is to that. It's a very
about
short
scabs.
story. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
No, and
scabs.
Yeah, and that was, I don't know, for some reason that was one of the earliest times that I can think of that. But the other thing that's interesting about that story is that this kid had a cut on his arm for a whole week, and the teacher didn't notice until she could form a pattern in her head.
Huh.
Didn't even realize that this kid had been showing up to class with an injury until...
How big was this injury?
I mean, it wasn't a particularly large
Okay,
cut.
I feel like you wouldn't notice, like, the kids... I feel like kids are always, like, bruised or cut or scraped because they're active and doing
they're always
things.
like
So
falling off the playground or something. That's
interesting.
what kids do. It's just really it makes me think of these particular tragedies and tragedies that happen quite often because our brains want to form patterns and want to see correlation where there isn't any. Then we take particular notice to certain tragedies.
Yeah. Most people who were involved, should knock on wood, so far, most people who were involved in the 3 Poltergeist movies have not experienced some kind of, like, horrifying disaster.
Yeah.
And did not die unexpectedly.
Yeah, and also, like, things mess up on set all the time.
Yeah.
People, unfortunately, die young.
Yeah.
All the time, and this doesn't seem like a statistical outlier. It doesn't seem like this is any worse than any other film franchise. With enough films together in a franchise, with enough people being involved, just unfortunately, something bad is bound to happen to someone.
Yeah, and I think just with the combination of it being a horror movie and within, a 6-year period, 4 actors had died, 2 being very young and very sudden and tragic, and them being main characters.
Yeah, and that's a very public, especially if there's a murder trial, it's a very public thing.
Yeah. So I think it was just a series of events that happened to happen, and it just solidified this idea that there was some kind of vindictive supernatural force chasing down everyone involved, which likely isn't the case. These are
this episode was a little different. I guess we'll see how the audio sounds with the microphone in different placement. We had a chance to do 2 unrelated subjects this time, and then have to figure out how they were connected at the very end.
Lines.
Find a way to...
Drawing lines is the theme.
Uh-huh.
Arts and crafts.
Uh-huh. A very good hobby. Everyone should draw lines more often.
Let's do some puzzles.
Yeah. Draw lines. Don't murder. No, just don't. Just draw a line. Like, please, draw lines.
Draw the line at murder. Don't cross it.
But yeah, so do we talk about next week's? Because we do have a list now of what that we're doing going forward.
We're going to London next week.
We are.
Not for real, though. I wish we were going for real. That'd be fun.
No.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell what yours is about, or do you just say the theme?
We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
Anyways, if you stuck around this long, thank you. We appreciate you. Please remember to connect with us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, or Facebook, or all of the above, at Spooky Story Podcast. That is spooky with an I.
SPOOKISTORY podcast.
And you can email us at spookystorypodcast@gmail.com. If you got a ghost story to share, we would love to read it.
Mm-hmm.
I like personal accounts. I really love people's personal accounts, and I would love to, with your permission, if you feel that I am the storyteller qualified for it, I would love to love to tell it.
Yeah, we like to hear feedback. We're still, this is only episode 6, so...
Thoughts, concerns. Send us a picture of your cat.
Yes.
Or dog. Or fish. Or lizard.
We like
hamsters. Send us your animals.
We like meeting pets, just like we like meeting people.
Send me a picture of your pet, and I will send you a picture of Minerva.
Did you list all the...
I did list them.
Okay. Well, in that case, compared to last episode where we were at 3 hours when we stopped the video feed, we're currently only at 2:17, so hopefully I can shorten this one down to be a more manageable, listenable segment.
I'm sorry, I really need to condense my research. I just find all of it interesting, and I want to tell everyone all of it. But no one wants to hear all of that. I need to get it together. I'll do better next time. I'm sorry.
Well, shall we give our names?
Oh, we didn't do that yet.
Nope.
I'm Rena.
You sound so sad.
Sometimes I am sad.
I'm Peter. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.